Hello, hello, hello. I am going live for the very first time on this channel. And I'm doing a live for the first time because I really want to share with women who are struggling with anxious attachment. Anxious attachment is something I have struggled with for many years. And I want to share how I healed out of my anxious attachment and how you can too. So if you show up in relationships or you come off as needy or clingy and controlling, or if your level of worry about your partner or what your partner is doing is always elevated, you likely have an anxious attachment that needs to be healed. So I'm going to share with you what was most helpful for me in healing my anxious attachment. And I hope it's helpful for you because the truth is, having anxious attachment doesn't just impact your emotions and how you show up in relationships, but it impacts your physical health. It puts a strain on your sympathetic nervous system where you are always on high alert and in fight or flight mode. And this can cause you all kinds of chronic illnesses. So, I'm going to share with you what worked for me in healing out of anxious attachment. And I really, 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 from the bottom of my heart, hope that it helps and works for you, or at least some of the tips that, may be able to help and work for you. But first, I am Vanetta, and welcome to the My Sister, My Seed YouTube channel. We are a nonprofit on a mission to empower and inspire women. And this channel is dedicated to self love and inner work and embodying the most important and most powerful gift that God ever gave women, and that is our divine feminine energy. And we also do work around sex trafficking and protecting young girls. That's why it's called My Sister, My Seed. So I invite you to go over to our website, mysistermyseed.org, and learn a little bit more about us and possibly join our community. And so, if this community sounds like it's a good fit for you, and I hope it does, please hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected. Okay, now I'm going to jump into how I healed my anxious attachment. And the first step to healing was realizing a few things. And what I realized first was that I couldn't relax in relationships. Anybody ever felt like that? I'm going to check the chat in a minute and I will answer any questions that you have. So if you want to put a question in the chat, please do so. I will answer it as soon as I, share all the tips that I wanted to share with you. And so again, the first thing that helped me really real was realizing that there are a few things that I needed to understand. And one of the things that I needed to realize and understand that helped me get on the path to healing was understanding that I couldn't relax in relationships. I never felt really emotionally safe in relationships. And I had a reason to feel this way because I would always pick the wrong partners who would make me feel emotionally unsafe. These were partners who could not meet my emotional needs. And so I realized that, I was doing this. And so when you are picking the wrong partners, of course, you're not going to be emotionally safe in a relationship. I also realized that I was subconsciously looking for validation in relationships. That was another big aha moment when I realized that, I had this issue that I was anxiously attached. And I had this really huge limiting belief that I had to prove my worth to those that I love. And this meant that I lacked self validation. And it also meant that loving others took precedence over me loving myself. And in trying to prove my worth to others, I would become very vested in relationships and it will cause me to hold on for dear life. Now, another thing that put me on the path to healing out of anxious attachment was realizing that I was an overthinker. And, that caused me to really have a mindset of catastrophizing. If anybody ever heard of that, catastrophizing is expecting the worst possible outcomes in every situation. And at the top of the worst possible outcome list for me was being abandoned. So I had this really huge fear of being abandoned. And so when you show up in relationships with all of this in your baggage, it is not pretty. And it can put a strain and a stress on the most healthy relationships. But the problem, again, with most anxiously attached people like myself is that we don't attract healthy partners. We attract avoidance and avoidantly attached partners, or some people say that they are emotionally unavailable, and that's what I call them too. Now, avoidance are the opposite of anxious attachment. They fear the intimacy and closeness that anxiously attached people crave. And so this relationship dynamic kind of creates this whole cat and mouse kind of game that might sound or might initially be exciting, but it quickly turns toxic. So, if you are not aware, there are four attachment styles. There's the anxious attachment, which is the attachment that I had to heal. There's the avoidant attachment. There's the fearful avoidant. And then there's the secure attachment. And if you want to know more about them, I highly, highly, highly recommend the book Attached. It will help you understand everything you need to know about attachment styles so you can get to secure if that is not where you are, because secure attachment is the goal. And so now I'm going to share with you how I healed out of being anxiously attached to becoming secure, and how you can too. But the first thing I want to say is that healing is not linear. It is a lifelong, ongoing journey. So I don't want anybody beating themselves up if you try anything that I'm sharing with you and it doesn't work immediately. Healing is a lifelong, ongoing journey. So when I say that I'm healed, it's not to say that I don't get triggered and I don't find myself having to work through it. I do. I absolutely do. But I have now developed the tools where my triggers don't send me down a rabbit hole. And so that's the goal. Now, the second step to healing out of my anxious attachment was understanding the origins of where it came from. And like you will discover if you read the book, all attachment styles are formed in childhood by the kind of love that you got or the love that you didn't get from your parents or your initial caregivers. So for me, I wasn't validated as a child, and I didn't get my emotional needs met to where I formed a secure identity. And this is how I developed that core limiting belief that I wasn't worthy of love, which made me feel like I had to prove to the people that I love that I am worthy. And to prove my love, I subconsciously looked for relationships that felt familiar. And relationships that felt familiar were relationships where my emotional needs would not be met, because that's what I was used to. And so I always found myself in relationships with emotionally unavailable men or avoidant attached men. But how I became conscious that I was recreating really my childhood relationship experience is also how I began to heal it. And healing began with my journey to embodying and embracing my divine feminine energy. Listen, I believe that feminine energy is the most powerful gift God gave women, and I stand 10 toes down on this belief. Now, learning about and embracing and embodying divine feminine energy led me to heal this anxious attachment that I had, because this journey requires you to take a deep dive inward to know yourself, to become comfortable in your skin and in your body, and to understand your full power, and to be rooted in and connected to your core identity. And when you do this kind of inner work, you really empower yourself, and who you thought you were gives way to who you really are. And you begin to change everything that doesn't align with this divine version of you. So again, I say 10 toes down, divine feminine energy is the most important gift that you can embrace. It is the best gift that I believe God gave women. And it taught me to learn to live from within and to trust my intuition and my instincts, which I refer to as my internal wisdom. So I learned to pay attention to the things that I had ignored about myself that needed healing. And the one thing I quickly paid attention to that needed healing was how I showed up in relationships. How I showed up in relationships was as a wounded woman. I had wounded feminine energy. And even though the wound happened as a child, it carried over into adulthood. And I was constantly looking for something outside of myself to make me feel whole and complete and give me a sense of belonging. But there is absolutely nothing outside of us that can make us feel whole and complete. These are things that are cultivated within us and by us. And so, one way feminine energy helped me heal anxious attachment is by becoming very self aware. I began to focus on all the parts of myself that I needed to pour more love into. Now, becoming more self aware was a result of um, learning to do daily meditation. Meditation for me was a huge component of healing out of anxious attachment. And there are two books that I really, really want to recommend to you that really helped me understand meditation and how to use it to heal. And they are Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself and Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Life changing books. I'm going to say it again, life changing. I began reading Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself and Meditating in November of 2023. It is now July. I've read both books. And when I tell you the amount of leap that in my healing journey and understanding myself and really knowing myself is tremendous. So again, I highly, highly, highly recommend these books. And I highly recommend meditation, because conscious meditation, which I refer to as mindfulness, is this practice of paying attention to and catching all of the negative thoughts that pop in your head and pop in your mind daily, so you can interrogate them and dispel them, which is what I do. I interrogate my thoughts. This was key for me because I was able to catch the thoughts before they triggered my nervous system and sent me on a downward spiral. And I found myself doing, when I would, before I would catch my thoughts, and I would go on this downward spiral, and it would lead to you doing all of that protest behavior where you are texting excessively and you are calling excessively when you're in a relationship. So being mindful that these thoughts are popping into your mind, you don't have to react to them, and you can respond to them. And you do that by really being conscious of what this thought is and where it came from. So, meditation is a self soothing way to remain calm. And when you are calm, you are not anxious. And this begins with you managing and being mindful of your thoughts. I personally don't allow negative thoughts to live in my head, because thoughts become things. Everything is energy. Everything is energy, even your thoughts. And thoughts materialize just like everything else that is visible in this world. It began with someone's thoughts, and now we see it. And the same is with those negative thoughts that you may have. When you think it, you will believe it, and it will become a reality. So I am very mindful of my thoughts. I am very conscious of them, and I make this a daily practice. So now I am very aware, and I challenge everything that thought pops into my head. I'm challenging that thought. Where did it come from? Why is it here? What is it trying to tell me? Now, the other part of meditation that has helped me tremendously heal the anxious part, the anxious attachment style that I have, is sleep meditation. Sleep meditation works fast because it is a reprogramming of your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is where all of those limiting beliefs from your childhood and from my childhood were stored. And so when you override those old programs, those old beliefs, and those old values that came from your childhood, and these values and beliefs that told you you're not enough and that I needed to be validated. I replace those old programs with new programs of knowing that I am enough and that I can validate myself. And so you no longer look for others to give you what you can give yourself. When you do this reprogramming, you allow yourself to change that deep rooted belief and value system that came and formed when you were a child. It allows you as an adult to put a new program in your mind. And so, again, you will no longer look for others to validate you and give you what you have already given to yourself. Now, there are all kinds of sleep meditations all over YouTube. I use a variety of them, and they can be anywhere from 4 hours to 11 hours in length. All you have to do is put it on, go to sleep, and you will see, eventually you will begin to see a difference. You will be able to see that you are changing your mind, or that you are more mindful of what you're thinking. So I highly recommend both these meditation practices: conscious meditation, where you are catching your thoughts, and then sleep meditation, where you are learning to reprogram your subconscious mind. Another way that I healed anxious attachment was learning to set healthy boundaries and learning to center myself in my life while decentering other people. Listen, I am the star. This is what I had to tell myself. Vanetta, you are the star of your life. And this means that your needs, my wants, my desires are always front and center, or they should be. And this is something that I had to be mindful of, because my childhood made me feel like I wasn't significant. And I know that may sound harsh, but it's the truth. And not that I didn't have parents who did the best they can, and sisters who loved me to the best of their ability, but sometimes it's just not enough. And sometimes things happen that makes you feel a certain way. And when you are a child, you just latch on to that, and it forms your identity. And so I grew up thinking I wasn't that significant. So I had to learn early to be good, or I learned early to be a good girl and to try to please other people. And putting others' needs before my own was a skill that I mastered. I was the quintessential good girl, and I mastered this skill of putting everybody's needs and wants and desires before my own. But it was one skill that I had to unlearn quickly. And I unlearned this skill by prioritizing myself without guilt. And I say without guilt because women tend to feel guilty when we prioritize ourselves. We've been conditioned to believe that our nurturing souls are here to nourish everybody else before we nourish ourselves. But this is absolutely unhealthy. And even the Bible says that we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, not before we love ourselves, not in place of loving ourselves, but as we love self. And so I had to learn to set firm boundaries in relationships and prioritize what I needed. And if those needs were not met, I had to make a conscious decision to leave. You don't stay when your needs aren't being met. You distance yourself, and that is something you have to give yourself permission to do. Yes, it's totally and perfectly fine. And when I began to do this, when I began to prioritize myself, I became more secure as a woman, which made me more secure in relationships. Now, another thing that helped me heal anxious attachment was constantly asking myself questions like, would the highest, best version of myself act this way, or be in this relationship, or accept this kind of behavior? And when the behavior or the relationship or the action didn't align with who I was or who I was becoming, I also let it go. And I gave myself permission to do that as well. So asking myself, Does this align? Does this behavior, am I still ignoring, putting my head in the sand and ignoring stuff? And I stopped doing that when I would ask myself, confront myself, Vanetta, does this align with the healthiest, most happiest version of yourself? And if it doesn't, you must act accordingly. Now, the last and maybe the most important thing that helped me heal my anxious attachment was therapy. A therapist who understood attachment styles and childhood trauma was invaluable to me. Having someone help me navigate and unpack relationship history and understanding who I was and how I was behaving and where it came from. This was a tremendous help in my journey to healing anxious attachment. In therapy, I learned to accept the past and to detach the past from my worth. Because what I also learned was that how people treat you is a reflection on who they are. It's not a statement or a reflection on my worth. And so these are things that I learned in therapy. And therapy also provided me with these tools and other tools that allowed me to give myself the love I didn't get as a child, to give myself emotional security. And it helped me identify real, healthy, authentic love and what that looks like. So, a word of caution about therapy though, pick your therapist wisely, because not every therapist is equipped to help you navigate attachment styles. And I had this one therapist that was, let me just say, that was very unhelpful. And so please pick your therapist wisely. Listen, healing isn't an overnight process. It takes time. And I hope I don't sound like, I jump from A to B to C and D on this journey. It does take time, it takes patience, and it takes a lot of self compassion and self love, but you deserve that. I know I did, and I know you do too. So be gentle with your process and remember that every step you take towards healing is a step towards a more secure and a more empowered you. So embrace your journey, lean into your divine feminine energy, and know that you are worthy of a safe place to love and be loved. So if there are any comments or questions in the chat, I'm just going to take a little peek, and I don't see any. But again, I just want you to know that you can heal your feminine energy. Not feminine energy. You can heal your anxious attachment with divine feminine energy. And I would love to know, if you are on this journey. I would love to know if you are struggling with anxious attachment, or where you are in the process. Are you a secure attached? Are you avoidant? Do you know your attachment style? And if it is not secure, how are you working on healing it? So I would love for you to leave me a comment. I know, and I say this all the time, that the comments also help me understand who's watching this channel, but it also can be a help and a benefit to other women who are watching this channel, because what you say, the insight you may give, may help someone else on their journey. So what has your journey to healing the attachment style been like for you? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you want to work with me on your journey of healing out of anxious attachment, I put a link in the description. So just click on the link and let me know. I would love to help guide you on this journey to healing out of anxious attachment with your feminine energy. I would love to help you do that. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and share this video and this channel with another sister who may need this kind of support. And I want to thank you for joining me today. And if you're looking at this video on repeat, thank you. Please also leave a comment, and I would love to hear it. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.